Sherard, bringing you your weekly voting workshop live from the Clark Historic Site in East Roanoke, Alabama. This week, we're going to get to one of my favorite topics, which is money. And I'm going to start with this question. How many of you have driven down County Road 5 or County Road 67 or 71 here in Randolph County? Do you know how these roads would get paved? You know why these roads are paved this year instead of next year, or what is the process, how this is decided? Today we're learning why your vote controls the money that affects Randolph County, from our roads to our schools to our sheriff's deputies. And we're going to talk about a little civics tonight. The three branches of government in relation to money. And we're going to start with the legislative branch. I know I've got a lot of things going on this slide, but this is kind of a complicated thing, and I'm going to do my best to try to explain this as simply as possible. So your legislative branch, you can think of them as your money makers. Your legislative branch of the Alabama legislature controls $14.24 billion in combined budgets. That's $10.5 billion in the Education Trust Fund, and that's $3.74 billion in the general fund. Now, the Education Trust Fund pays for teacher salaries, funds universities, and early childhood programs, while the general fund pays for state prisons, Medicaid, state troopers, and mental health services. Your legislature just decides how much money goes to education versus everything else. Now, what does this mean for Randolph County? When this legislature votes to increase the Education Trust Fund by 5.8%, like they did in the past, that money flows down to our Randolph County schools. When they fund Medicaid from the general fund, the rural clinics in Wedowee and Roanoke get reimbursement dollars. Why you should vote? You elect state representatives who sit in Montgomery and vote on these $14 billion budgets. Here's another real example. The legislature just approved $18 million statewide to help offset rising state health employee health care costs. Our county sheriff's deputies benefit from that decision. So the decision in Montgomery affects deputies here in Randolph County. So even though it doesn't seem like there's a direct impact, there is. So we're going to move on to the next branch of government, the executive branch. So you can think of them as the money spenders. On the state level, the governor proposes the budget and implements the legislature's decisions. The governor decides the executive branch, the governor decides how much money gets spent within the limits that the legislature sets, appoints the heads of agencies that spend the money. So what does this mean for Randolph County? The governor decides if the Alabama Department of Transportation prioritizes rural roads like ours or urban highways. Remember County Road 5, County Road 7? The governor appointees at the Alabama Department of Transportation decides which county roads get Rebuild Alabama Act funding. That's $1 to $1.4 million annually to Randolph County. And why you should vote? You elect the governor who makes these spending priorities. And here goes another real example. The Rebuild Alabama Act helps pave our county roads, but the governor's transportation director decides which roads get done first. And that's how we put that together. Decisions in Montgomery by the governor filter down all the way down to Randolph County. Now we're going to move on to the judicial branch. And you can call them the money checkers. So the courts ensure government spending is constitutional and legal, and they can block unconstitutional spending. Now, what does this mean for Randolph County? So we had a little tax misallocation problem a little while ago. Our county commission miscalculated some of the county tax money, $283,000, that went to, I think, Roanoke City schools instead of going to the county. And those funds, they had to come up with a plan to recoup those funds and get them to where they needed to go. So why should you vote? The judges are appointed or elected officials. Their decisions protect the taxpayer money and protect it from being spent illegally. So now we're going to go to the levels of government. And we're going to start with the federal level. So the federal level, that's your national government. That's Washington, D.C. So that's broad focus on the federal level. And the money some of the money starts there. So what flows to us? So the community development block grants, that's $500,000 that goes to County Roads 30 and County Road 17 and helps get those roads paved. The American Rescue Plan Act provided $150,000 of funding for stormwater pipe replacement. Federal highway grants through the U.S. Department of Transportation and Alabama Department of Transportation. So one good example, U.S. Highway 431 runs right through Randolph County. That is a U.S. highway, and it's paved with federal funds. The federal government also provides Title I education funding. So they provide some of the funding for our schools. So what does that mean for you? Your vote here in Roanoke, Alabama, and Randolph County affects your infrastructure, investment, and education support. Now we can move on down the line. So the federal government was at the top, and then we come down to our state level. That's getting a little closer, more of a significant impact locally. What flows to us? On the state level, your education trust fund dollars. Education trust fund, remember the fund I mentioned that the state legislature controls, that $10 billion? They pay Randolph County teacher salaries and fund Southern Union State Community College. The Rebuild Alabama Act, which was $1 to $1.4 million for the county for paving of roads. Medicaid disbursements come from the state, which fund rural clinics. Your state general fund supports state troopers who patrol the highways. Your vote on the state level affects your teachers' pay, your school funding, road maintenance, healthcare access. So let's look at another real world example. When the state increases the education trust fund by 5.8%, which they did, that means more money for our teachers in schools. When the legislature funds the Rebuild Alabama Act, that money specifically for County Road 5 and County Road 71 here in Randolph County. So the money's flowing down, the money flows down to us. So let's come on down to our local level. So the Randolph County Commission. So your county is actually a branch, a division of state government. So when you think of your county government, your county courthouse, that is actually a state office, a division of the state. So what do they control? Your county general fund. For Randolph County, that's about $20 million. That pays your sheriff's deputies. That funds your jail operations, your courthouse staff. The gas tax fund buys asphalt and gravel, pays for dump trucks to fix our dirt and paved roads. Infrastructure, $8.3 million in highway and road allocations for road paving of roads and repair of roads. So recently, our county had to cut $1 million from the proposed budget due to revenue shortfalls. Rising employee health care costs squeezed the budget. Post-pandemic, lake house tourism revenue dried up. And your vote for the county commission decides if the sheriff gets more deputies, if the roads get paved, and if we can afford employee raises. So still on the local level, now we're talking about school boards. So your school board elections, how state and federal education dollars are spent locally, your teachers' salaries, school supplies, building maintenance, whether schools get updated computers or technology. So the real impact is when the state increases the education trust fund, local school boards decide, do we give teachers raises, or do we buy textbooks, or do we fix the roof? Your vote determines who's on that school board, who makes that decision. This directly affects your local schools. So we're still on the local level. So that money came all the way down from the federal level. We've gone from the federal level, federal voting on the national level, to the state level, and now we're down to the local level, right down to your city elections. So your city controls your municipal sales tax revenue, your police department, your fire stations, and your parks, your trash pickup, street maintenance, and your utilities. When you vote for your city council, that's going to affect your police presence, your park quality, and your local services. So now I hope you all understand how this money flows and how these elections determine these budgets. This is the key point that I wanted to make tonight. Is your vote affects how this money flows. So you can see from this graphic here, we started at the top. So you vote for your state rep, your legislature votes, controls the $14.24 billion budget, your Education Trust Fund and Rebuild Act, Alabama Act, they passed that. That money flows down to Randolph County. So you vote on your county commission. They control the $20 million county budget. Roads get paved, deputies get hired, courthouse stays open, and that money flows down. Your vote controls how that money flows. You vote on your school board members. They decide how the state education dollars are spent. Your teachers get raises. Your school gets supplies. Programs expand. And that's all determined by your vote. And that's how that money flows down to the local level, from the top to the bottom. And that's why voting is important. And I've got another graphic here so you can see. I mean, the thing I want everyone to really understand about all of this is your vote is not, people are not, that's why we do this voting workshop. When you vote, you're voting over the control of these budgets. You're voting on the control of these budgets. So on the state level, $10.5 billion in the Education Trust Fund, $3.74 billion in the General Fund. You got the Rebuild Alabama Act, $1.4 million for repair and paving of roads in Randolph County. That's a lot of money. Those elected officials are controlling those funds. Your vote is important. On the county level, the county has a $20 million budget. So these local county elections are important because they're controlling the budget. Out of that $20 million budget, 73% is going to public safety. And public safety, whenever you see public safety, think police and think sheriff. So the sheriff, we just had a primary election for our sheriff. And that was a key election. That was a very important election. And the sheriff is going to control a large portion of the county's budget. And that's why that is important. On the city level, our local city elections, your local sales tax, your police, your fire, your parks are going to be controlled by those elected officials that you voted for, and they're going to control those budgets. That's why your voting is important. See this? I mean, I hope I'm being very clear about this. I hope everybody is following what I'm saying here. That's why your vote is important. Now I'm going to go a little further. Now we're going to talk about election, campaign, and donor spending. So, nationally, on elections, in a typical election cycle, $15.9 billion is spent on the typical election. And I've got a breakdown here of that. So for ads, media and advertising, $7.6 billion. Fundraising and logistics, $1.67 billion. Direct campaign operations, $1.47 billion. Administrative and legal services, 7.7%, $1.14 billion. That is what is spent in this country during an election cycle. And this is a lot of money. I want people to understand the amounts of money that are spent on elections, on candidates. This is donations and PAC money for elected officials. And I want people to I'm going to jump on camera real quick. I want people to understand that they're not spending this money for nothing. Okay? This money is not being spent for nothing. This money is being spent on these elections and on these campaigns to control those budgets. And we have to be aware of this stuff. We have to be aware and mindful that this is an investment in controlling government and controlling these budgets and controlling where that money goes and how government spends that money. And that's the key point that I want everybody to take away from this. They're not spending this money for fun. So this is on the national level. For the state, contributions regularly exceed $115 million in the election cycle. Now, Alabama is supposedly one of the poorest states in the country. One of the poorest states in the country. But $115 million is spent in the state of Alabama on donations to and political campaigns from political donors and PACs. These people are not, this money is not being spent for no reason. It is not being spent for no reason. You got corporate and individual donors, and Alabama is unique. We're going to get into that, but there are no contribution caps. So corporate and individual donors donate to candidates. Then we have PAC-to-PAC transfers, masking the original donor. So sometimes we don't even know where the money's coming from that goes to candidates. And then we have out-of-state super PACs that support candidates. And all of this comes together in the state of Alabama, $115 million. Look, that we know about. This 115, we just know about. there's more that we don't know about. So elections and voting is money. It involves money, and I want everybody to understand that this is sort of a recap. We talked about this on week 1. We talked about this on week 1 before I started doing this live. This is about money. Now, we're going to move on, and this is an issue. This is one of the issues that we have, which is the influence of dark money. Now, let me talk about dark money for people who don't understand dark money. So, contributors, individuals, corporations, use legal entities, 501c and other corporations and other kind of legal entities, so that they can anonymously donate money to political candidates or political spending, ads, lobbying, and get out to vote efforts. Now, for the country, now I'm gonna have to tell you a little history. So around 12 to 15 years ago, there were laws to stop this type of thing, but those limits on this dark money and corporate donations to political candidates, those laws were removed. Those restrictions were removed, so people can anonymously donate money to political campaigns, and we never know who they are. So you don't know who's donating to the campaign. And so now we've reached a record high, $1.9 billion in dark money. So we don't know who is giving all this money. We have no idea where that money comes from. But that's $1.9 billion in dark money that's donated to political campaigns in this country. And then let's talk about the shadow pipeline. So Alabama is unique in here because there are no campaign contribution limits in Alabama. And combined with the dark money, you got the shadow pipeline. So you have individuals and corporations and PACs which can shuffle money around clandestinely and use money to influence political campaign, influence elections, and no, we don't know where the money is coming from. No one knows where the money comes from. It's coming, and a lot of it's coming from out of state. So people outside the state are influencing state elections with dark money. Because just what I got started from the beginning, elections are about money. And it's about controlling those state budgets and controlling government. And this is what it's about. Now let's talk about Alabama specifically. So we had an attorney general runoff this year. $3 million in dark money appeared and was used to support a candidate in the attorney general Republican primary runoff, using shell entities and independent federal PACs and the shadow pipeline and dark money to influence the attorney general race. So we have out-of-state, non-disclosure groups influencing elections, buying ads, avoiding contribution reports, failure to report under the FCPA, under the Fair Campaign Practices Act, and basically circumventing the law to influence elections. In the Alabama Senate race, we had $12 million. $12 million from donors outside of the state of Alabama used to influence the Alabama Senate primary runoff. Backing one independent media bias, backing one candidate. Highly capitalized. So that's a lot of money, big money, corporate interests, fundamentally altering Alabama elections. There you go. So now we are approaching the end of this series, and I'm going to be opening up the live stream to questions. Either you can post your questions in the live stream in the feed, or you can post them there. I can check them out later, and then answer questions or address your questions in the next session. But we're going to start. What we're going to start now is recapping some of the material that we've gone over the previous weeks. This series, we've been doing this series for about 6 weeks now. The primary election is over, and our runoff election has been decided. So it's time to go ahead and wind this thing down. So we're going to we're going to be recapping some of the material that we've gone over, but I'm also going to open the floor for questions. And I'd like to, anyone who has any questions or anything, I'd like for y'all to go ahead, post those questions. You'll put them in the feed. I will take a quick look before I sign off tonight, and see if I can answer any of those questions. But if I don't have an answer, I'll try and find you an answer and get something to you. Okay, what question do you have?
Well, as I was listening to your presentation, one of the things that came to mind when you were talking about the money and how money flows from these various political, structures or entities such as the federal government, the state government, the local government, etc. One of the things that came into my mind was there have been recent concerns raised about historically Black colleges and universities. And I think every Black citizen, I know this, it sounds like I'm making a statement, but it's a question as well, because you may have listeners who are not aware, but money that was supposed to have been allocated to many of our historically Black colleges and universities, for some reason, for reasons unknown, didn't make it to those institutions. And right now, we have a lot of our Black colleges and universities, HBCUs is what we call it, who are actually suffering and on the verge of closing. But according to facts and surveys and research that's been done, the money owed to HBCUs is in the billions. It's in the billions. And what I would like to hear you address, to what extent we as citizens, whether voting or non-voting citizens, impact these kinds of instances where we see our historically Black colleges and universities suffering because some way, somehow, money has gotten misallocated, and not just once, but repeatedly.
Well, I'm aware of that situation, and I know there's been a problem in a lot of other states. I know Tennessee is the first one that comes to mind. They've had a lot of problems with the state legislature of Tennessee providing the funds that were promised and allocated to Tennessee HBCUs, and they were having a lot of trouble with not receiving the funds that they were promised and actually allocated for the school. Now, I'm going to have to do some research and get back to you on that, because I'm not up to date on what's going on with Alabama HBCUs. I'm not sure what's going on with Alabama, but I don't know, but I'll find out. I don't know, but I will find out, and I will let you know. I will let you know, and I'll let everyone else know right here. Let me come around and see if there are any other questions here. Okay. Okay, let's see. So we have a question from someone I'm not sure if this is a question or a statement, but someone has mentioned the issue with the county commission getting gets a tax on online payments. So let me see. That looks like a statement. So welcome, that's Miss Rice Heron. Let's see. I got some greetings. I got hello. Let's see. Okay. So someone's asking about fixing streets. Okay. So yeah. Okay. There's a statement here. Okay. Also, so this is Miss Rice Heron. Hello, good evening. Also, every time you order online, the county commission gets a tax on that which they add to their budget, I suppose, so they can keep us poor. Yes, ma'am. I agree. And someone else here is, I guess it's a question. Is this a question about fixing a street? So now we covered this a couple of weeks ago. I'm gonna jump back on camera. I'm gonna come back around and get back on camera because we mentioned this before. About uh, getting your streets paved. That's your local government. That's your city government. So now if you're, and that's something that maybe we should cover. So if you have a situation concerning your street, or you have a problem with streets or any kind of concerns locally, that's when you need to speak to someone with your city government. So what I would recommend, if you're having a problem with a street, a pothole, or something like that, go talk to your city council. Look, we just got a new city council been elected with I think we've got almost entirely new city council elected and a new mayor, and they're doing a good job. They've been very receptive, and they will listen to you. Take your grievances to the city council and use the process. Use the process. Exercise your right. Go talk to the city council or talk to the mayor. Let them know you're having a problem with your street. It's a pothole or there's an issue, and hopefully they will take care of it for you. Because see, that's a local problem. Now we're talking about local elections again. So if you have a problem in your local area, contact your city council. Talk to your city council. Okay. Let me come back around and see if I have any other questions. Okay. Okay. So I think that's it for this evening. Yeah, I think that's it for this evening. No more questions for this evening. Um, Tomorrow's Juneteenth. I hope everyone's gonna celebrate the Juneteenth celebration. Uh, for anyone who's not aware, there will be a Bridging the Gap will be hosting a luncheon tomorrow at 11 a.m. at their offices in downtown Roanoke, and I'll be on program there as well. Um, I'm sure they would welcome anyone who wants to come by and celebrate Juneteenth with us on tomorrow. And besides that, I hope everyone has an excellent Juneteenth, and I will see you next week. Thank you.